Provo School District Board. It is a few minutes after noon on Thursday, March 28, 2019. We are gathered in the City Center Conference Room at 351 West Center Street, Provo, Utah. Just to get the legalese out of the way, this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube at the Provo City Council channel. It will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Please be aware that the microphones can pick up side conversations. Let's begin with a roll call. So we'll start with Mr. Strachan.
Mr. Strachan.
Julie Rash, School Board Member.
Melanie Hall, School Board Member.
Dave Sewell, City Council. George Handley, City Council.
David Harding, City Council.
Jim Pedersen, School Board.
Nate Bryson, School Board.
Dave Knecht, City Council.
Stephanie Bryant, School District.
All right, and we will begin with an opening prayer that will be provided by Ms. Melanie Hall.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're grateful that we can meet here this day as a City Council and also as a school board. We ask that you please bless us as we participate in this meeting, that we might be able to talk about those things that are needed and necessary. And we're grateful for thy many blessings and the beautiful weather we're participating in, and we say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Hall, before we get to business, request the patience of the school board while we conduct some important council business. Our administrative assistant is celebrating her birthday in a couple of days, and so we wanted to sing to her and to invite you to join us. And we'd like asking Bryce to start us off.
Oh, somebody's had a birthday. Our sufficient Elizabeth here. May Father in heaven bless her through all the coming years.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Elizabeth. Happy birthday to you.
Elizabeth is absolutely wonderful. We could not do half of what we do around the council without her, so grateful for her. I noticed a number of people came in. Let's just do a little supplemental roll call if you joined us. We'll start out here.
Gary Winterton.
Rebecca Nielsen, School Board. Jennifer Partridge, School Board.
That is it for those around the table. Excellent. So we will begin with item number 1, a presentation from the Redevelopment Agency regarding creation of a redevelopment area near the East Bay Golf Course. There was at least some confusion about who was requesting this and whatnot, but I believe we've heard that it was coming from our Parks and Rec Department. So you'll be doing the presentation, or is it redevelopment?
Yeah, we're supposed to be redevelopment initially, and Dixon is texting him right now to let him know that you are going to have a discussion.
Parks and Rec has a presentation.
Okay, so could we move to that now?
And we can muddle our way through the redevelopment side.
I can answer the question.
All right.
All right, let's do that. Thank you. Is there? Oh.
Bryce, you with me on this one? All right.
What do you get?
I'm Scott Henderson. I'm Director of Parks and Recreation for Provo City. So we're talking about a project that is at or near our golf course site. So this has to do with housing and the medical school site, which is well, this shows the scope of the entire project. And then the first area that we're talking that has already been part of the development agreement to discuss is Area 1, which I'm looking at tax increment going back to the developers there. The area that Parks and Recreation is part of, and thank goodness I see Dave Walter in the back here, so he will correct everything I say here. Area number 2 is on the actual golf course site, and that's where Parks and Recreation would like to talk to you about looking at that site as a possible source and to enhance the golf course, which gave up land for this development project, and be able to kind of work towards a successful outcome, both from an exciting project in Provo and enhance the golf course. So I'm going to hand it over to our golf manager, golf professional, Brett Watson, and he'll take you through the concepts that we have here.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, everyone. So as Scott mentioned, what we're looking to enhance is, enhance what we're calling our central golf development complex. And as part of that, it's a really revolutionary idea, and it's a concept that basically doesn't exist in the industry. And you use beginning golf equipment and basically a modified tennis ball, and you can play on a short course. Holes are 60 to 70 yards. Anybody can play. You can take strollers, you can take young children. It's extremely easy to pick up the game, and it's a wonderful, date night, and the high schools will use it, and we'll also looking into a community outreach program through the PGA, where we actually go into the elementary schools and the junior highs and teach them golf, and just to get them outside, get them playing. And so that lighted futures course we're talking about is in this area here. And then there's one other course in the entire country that has this, and it's in Loveland, Colorado. And so, Bryce, if I hit something special here, do I? Sorry, the video is the best representation. I'm sure Channel 17 will do a much better job when we implement our course in.
With the tennis ball?
Yeah, so it's a modified tennis ball. You can see the clubs. This would be a putter that they've got in their hands. There's two clubs. There's one that hits the ball and one that putts it, basically. And then instead of the Velcro flag up, we'll have an actual hole in the ground to make it a little more.
So we're having some technical difficulties here.
May not get sound.
You're fine. If you just want to play it without the sound, right? It's fine. It's kind of self-explanatory. Ball goes about 50 yards, maybe, when hit, and like I said, extremely safe and extremely easy for beginners to introduce them into the game. You can kill it, Bryce. We can move on. There we go. Okay, perfect. So as part of that, and because of the unique setup of the golf course, this would be the futures course. This is our driving range that you can see that doesn't really have anything on it. And then right now we have a short executive course that winds in this area. But after looking at it, what we're wanting to do is route it kind of in a horseshoe style around our driving range. The reason for that is it allows the driving range to be lighted with lights going in and then lights going out, which would light the futures course and all of the short course. Why that's unique, there's only one lit driving range in all of Utah County. There is no lighted golf course in the entire state of Utah, and there is no lighted futures course in the entire world that we know of. So what we're asking is to build all of that into our one area. High schools will be able to use this, and Scott's going to go into the mixed use as we continue on. And then just to kind of give...
How big is our short course now? How many holes?
How many holes? It's 7, kind of. I'd say 6.5. So
6.5.
we're going to 6, but there's much better holes when it's all said and done. Equal distance, the same experience. What we can also do in this area here where we had movies in the park, that's where we host all the cross-country events with the high schools. We'll be able to kind of reinvent that area and make it much more adaptive to those types of elements. Sorry, I thought I took you. Right. Sorry, Bryce.
You probably just have to click on PowerPoint, go back to...
Okay, try it now. Try it moving it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, awesome. So as you can see, this is the medical school that's been talked about so often. These are the 3 holes. That will be replaced over here. So this is the medical school portion. What we're discussing as part of this central complex is the immediate area right around the driving range. So it would be here, around there. I'll give it to Scott for the rest.
So we feel like this gets to that proverbial win-win that we always talk about with these type of projects. So the futures course, anything Parks and Recreation has done with the young family activity has been a success story in our community. It also starts developing people about getting used and in an active lifestyle coming to the golf course, so it starts helping develop a market there. Brett talked about how unique it is, so it turns into a destination. You know, the lighting and the uniqueness really works in our community. We will be doing school outreach programs, be able to have a facility that we can go to the elementary schools and actually take this show on the road with this equipment and teach kids about golf and start promoting this active lifestyle. And it serves as a great introductory and training mechanism, both for beginners to golf and even for the high school teams that play at that golf course. And then that really transitions to the short course range. So the futures course is kind of the generational tot golf. The short course is what we have out there, and that will be the only lighted course, as we talked about. It really does adapt to different things. We were able to do our cross-country meets that the city and the school district work together on. I think it's a pretty simple business plan that with lights, expanded use means expanded revenue, so it strengthens the golf course budget and operation. The high school coaches and players were all involved in this process, so we'll be able to, advance what's available to them. A lot of times golf starts as an early spring sport, so extending the day and extending their practice times is great for them. It also matches very well with their university classes that we can offer some of those in the evening. And then this type of concept of the lighted course came up during our economic development summit, where they talked about a top golf element. You add the lighting to a municipal driving range and bring in some other amenities, you can start having that top golf type amenity and attracting people to East Bay. And it really creates a very unique combination where we will have, after the mitigation holes, a top-level championship course, and then we add the futures and short course, and it'll be a combination that's incomparable in any other community, and it's something that we're really excited about. Now that David is here, this next part moves to spreadsheets and numbers, and I think that's exactly where his expertise is.
So, we talked a little bit before in the past about a project area that would be on a portion of the golf course, particularly where the housing element was going to be for the medical school. This is the existing property values as they're currently out there. You can see that this is the larger piece where the medical school will be built. It is transferred, but the county has not assigned a value to it as yet. We expect that they'll do it here in the next little while. And this will become the base year then for our projections of tax increment moving forward. So I know it's a lot, and I apologize. So we're talking about, these are the tax, this is what you would currently get, and this would become the base year. So that right now, as I mentioned earlier, the one piece is not in here, so this number will go up, but this would be what the existing taxing entities currently get. This line right here is the school district. So this is the base year moving forward. This is, you expect to get $24,000 a year currently, and you would continue to get that as you move forward, and then this is just takes it out over 12 years for $363,000. So this postulates a 12-year project area. We are talking about transferring half the detention basin. There's 7.5 acres for the housing portion, and then the 22 piece would be for the medical school. You can see that they're planning to put in about $120 million worth of investments into the medical school. And another $30 million for the, well, if you take both housing pieces, you're closer to $80 million. These are the tax rates that we use in the collection. So as you can see down here, this is the base year. I used what we currently had in there to go through, and then this would be the assessed value available for tax increment purposes. And then here are the percentages down here where we move through. So we plugged in just the regular percentages were 70% for the school district, 75 for the county, and 95 for the city as we move forward. And then this would be the total increment flow as it comes through down here. So over a 12-year period, this is what we are projecting to roughly $4.5 million. And that's on both pieces. So if you to go back, we're talking about two benefit areas. One was on the housing component, and that would be going to the housing developer. The remaining piece would be for financing the improvements that Mr. Henderson and Mr. Watson spoke about in their presentation. So the opportunity is that since we are looking to do some improvements to the golf course anyway, this would give us a chance to come up with an enhanced improvement, and then we would structure the agreement so that the tax increment portion on that would cease either in 10 years, or we hit the $1.5 million in increment, whichever comes first. Similar to what we've done in other interlocal agreements with the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Let me apologize. This item has been batted around a few times, and I appreciate Mr. Walter. He, up until 15 minutes ago, thought that this was not being presented today, and so I appreciate you stepping in and winging it like you did, and you did a great job. Basically, it's the first time that the council has heard this, and as leadership, we were figuring that maybe we should hear this first before bringing it to the school board. So we haven't seen it. We haven't shared our thoughts on it yet. But I think this was a good presentation by Parks and Rec to kind of give an idea of, because there are definitely more than just the taxes that could impact school-aged children in our city. So it's a good presentation. Appreciate that. I think that the council, I mean, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I guess it's the school board, but I think the council is going to take this back and kind of dive into it before officially proposing it to the school board.
Well, this was probably a good time and place to have a presentation, and if the school board's comfortable with that, then certainly we can spend time going into detail, but if somehow they're not, then I'm not sure that we need to do much more.
I don't think it hurts to bring these things to the school board a little early, because I think some of the board members previously said that it seems like it's a last minute thing with these RDAs, that they're almost done and then being asked to hurry up and approve it. So I think it was good to have this meeting.
Okay, good. Excuse me. And I think love to hear you. We have a new board, and so maybe some different thoughts. But at least my impression, I'm not speaking for the rest of the council, but just my impression has been somewhat of a, well, the board, we can kind of set this threshold, and we're comfortable just following the city. Whatever you want to do up to that threshold, just know that we're not going to approve anything above that, and then you get to prioritize how you want to use that. So I think that's kind of been my thinking.
There's a little uniqueness with this one that I haven't had a chance to talk to our board about after talking with David a couple of days ago, in that typically increments go to the city for infrastructure, parking garages, sidewalks. This is a little unique. I'm not aware of any school districts that have dealt with this yet. David said he has contacted some attorneys. So we're going to want to investigate that side a little bit. I think the board's going to want to. And make sure that we're in agreement with that's how you want some of your tax increment to be spent.
So we contract with the firm of Smith Harpickinson out of Salt Lake City. They are well known for their expertise in redevelopment and land use issues. In fact, they advocate for and provide advice to the Utah Redevelopment Association. And I've shared that our attorney's contact information with Ms. Bryant, so she can feel, she can call them on your behalf, or you're welcome to call them as well. I'd be happy to extend that to you for those of you that would like to contact him directly. So his name's Adam Long. Excuse me. So we have no problem with you contacting him directly and asking any questions you might have. So some of you may wonder about having the two different areas where the money flows. It's not too dissimilar from the mall. So at the mall we currently have a project area, and we do get tax increment from that. Part of that goes to the owners of the mall, Brixton Capital, but a portion of it does go directly to Dillard's since they own their own piece on that. So this would not be that dissimilar of a situation there where we have two people getting a portion of the tax increment stream.
So if I understood you, that there may be some reasons why this proposal might not even fit with that kind of older model. There may be some additional reasons why the school board may not be on board with it.
We haven't even had a chance to talk, but my initial reaction is we're a taxing entity giving up tax to another taxing entity. And so it's a little different than Dillard's getting it, or
yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to imply it was identical.
Yeah.
But I mean, the situation in this case is that we're keeping a portion of the increment in order to make the improvements, have a funding stream for the improvements of the golf course.
Is the school board giving up? They're not giving. They'd still get their full amount.
We're deferring taxes.
You're deferring taxes, but
right.
you would defer it no matter how. It's the city that is actually giving it.
It's how it's being used.
It's how it's being used. You're deferring taxes, no question, to do that. But you would be deferring taxes if it went to infrastructure either way.
Yeah, the part that's a little iffy for me that I need to look into is that it's not really going to infrastructure, it's going to improvements of city property.
And
you're an attorney, you might know even more than me, but it's just I haven't had a lot of time to talk to other school districts, and I haven't had time to call your attorney yet to kind of dig into.
And I have a lot of questions about that because I think their portion would be going to infrastructure. So Provo City's portion of the tax increment would be going to the golf course. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're saying
the whole thing for
proposing the tax for the tax increment.
And it's very possible.
Okay, that's the thing that I'm not understanding. I have a lot of questions.
Sure. So I think this is perhaps why we were continuing it, because
there needs to be a discussion on it.
Because this is somewhat unusual, and again, this is the first time the council has, most of the council have heard about it. I think a few have heard and brought up concerns as well, and so we probably should have vetted it a little bit more. But you make a good point. We don't want to have this completely packaged and all ready to go before it hits the board, but I think this one may have been a little premature, and I apologize. I shouldn't have uncontinued it.
I think that's okay. It gives me the chance to do a little bit of research and give it to my board via email. And
I think I saw George's hand first, and then we'll run.
My comments, well, sort of a question of clarification. I recall that the improvements on the golf course were I guess I'm just going to ask the question. Were not the improvements on the golf course a promise by Rocky Mountain?
So let me kind of see if I can.
This is part of the deal, as I recall, but I thought it was their gesture
Before we answer that, just apologize. So we have other items.
Yeah, I don't want to take all of your time.
And I think a lot of these questions, again, I think we need to have more discussion, and this may not be the best place to dive into some of those more detailed questions. We need to have these.
I just thought it would help address the issue of where the money is coming from to pay for the improvements.
So intentionally, the chair said that we wanted to, originally because of the discomfort about having to get into the details, this was only going to be a few-minute presentation to give you a heads up that this is coming. But the real discussions, the policy discussions, the what is happening with the money, where the money comes from, those all need to be dealt with by the respective boards, and so we need to send it back. And
yeah, this was only merely meant to be an introductory issue, not to ask you to take a decision and approve it at this time.
Introductory today, and then we get into the detail and have a chance to flesh things out a bit more.
And this is really exciting, I think. I just think it's something that this is a great opportunity. We can look at it and see if it's the right opportunity. But this is kind of exciting to be able to have this potential. Possibly.
May I answer Mr. Hanley's question as quickly as I can?
I'd prefer maybe just by email later.
Certainly, I can do that.
Let's do that. We're already beyond time on this. But again, I apologize. I made some missteps on here that exacerbated all of this. Thank you to everyone who came and presented. Thank you to the board for understanding. And let's move on to item number 2. A discussion on a rezone application for a proposed development at 862 East Quail Valley and potential impacts to nearby Provo School District properties. This was requested by Councilmember Gary Winterton, and I believe he will be presenting this.
And this is information for the school board. And as we had our neighborhood symposium yesterday, our group was really concerned about the growth of Tempe High School, and how are we going to do, if we're going to rebuild it, where is everything going to go? They're concerned about the challenges of growth at that school. And one of the things that they had mentioned was parking. And this development that is proposed for the Quail Valley Road, what's the name of that street? Quail Drive, is an interesting proposal. It is about the only piece of raw ground that is near the school. And I know that the developer's here and is interested in putting in six connected units. And that's a little more density than the neighborhood is comfortable with. They would like every lot to be in the R110 zone. And it's different than they're used to, and I understand that. And one of their concerns has to do with parking issues, and it has to do with an office building next to it, and there's a lot of details around that are not resolved. But this being about the only ground that is not built on, I would like to, as we talked further, the neighbor who was saying, well, they're looking for a bond, possibly, to redo Timpview High School. And I had a few people say, why are we looking to redo Timpview High School if there's not enough ground there? They keep telling us there's not enough ground. And the neighborhood says, I had one in particular says, I am not really interested in voting for it if they're not going to willing to pick up some of this ground. And I don't know what the ground costs. I know that this has been an interest to the school board at some point and the need has not been there. But as the neighborhood looked at the growth and potential growth that's coming north of Timpview High School, they were going through all the developments with me saying, we need more ground around Timpview High School. Well, this is about the only ground that's not built on. And that is something for, I think, the school board to truly consider, because if this proposal goes through as it is, the value of that property will go up, the homes will go up, that land will, should you need it, which is right adjacent to the seminary, and it connects back into your parking area, I believe, that will go away, or it will cost a lot more to pick up because there will be homes on it. I bring this to the school board just to have them have the discussion about it. There are changes, things are going to happen with that piece of property sometime, some way, whether it works with the office or something, but the neighborhood is concerned about parking issues. If Timpview grows, where is that parking going to land? And they think it's landing on the street in front of their homes. And they're concerned about that, and I recognize that. This is a potential site for the school board to pick up a piece of raw ground at a price that would be less expensive than if there were 6 townhomes built on it. And I don't know, I haven't even talked with the developer about this, but I would like to just have you think about that being the only piece of ground left. Because I do believe that Timpview does need more ground. It's not on a big enough footprint as it is, from what I hear, compared to other high schools.
Can you find us 40 or 50 acres somewhere else?
And that's it, that becomes the issue. You know, is there 40 or 50 acres that we can move it to that we would like to move it? I don't know that there is, but this is, if you're going to keep it here, this is an opportunity potentially to pick up a little bit of ground that is a little less expensive. It was thrown out to me at the neighborhood symposium, and I said, I think that that's worth the discussion, and let you guys kind of take it from there.
I would invite Melanie and Nate, who are the board members who represent that area, any input that you would have for.
I'm concerned about selling off PF zoning land. We have some other land that was just sold in front of Centennial as well, that I'm concerned about what's going to go in front of those if we start selling off this.
We are not selling, this is already owned.
Okay.
This is already owned and it's zoned PF.
But it's zoned PF, so my concern is rezoning it.
We can pull it up. It's kind of a weird.
It is a weird, unusual piece, but
it's kind of a weird parcel as it sits next to.
I'm going to ask the question: is it fair for us to leave something in PF?
Here's my issue with it right now is, I mean, the problem with it is the seminary building is right there, so it makes it really awkward. It's kind of on a slope, so it's tough to build on. It'd be expensive to build on. But I worry about changing the zoning right now because we're going to hopefully do a big construction project, and we don't know how it's going to be sited. We don't know how they're going to stage it. But I could see a situation where it might be useful to go through that property to reach that back parking lot.
And is that fair to the owner who is owns it?
That's a good question.
So that's why I think if you want it, buy it. If you want to use it for that purposes, I think that the school should buy it rather than put all this burden on the owner.
I think we put the zoning where we put it in case the school can use it in the future. And I think we would have a better idea of whether or not we can use it once the bond's passed and once we set up the, what we're going to do with the school. Until we get to that point, it's kind of hard for us to know what we want to do with that site.
And our facilities director has some opinions on how useful it is to us.
I don't know if it is useful.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is. If we could move the seminary building and get that.
Have you looked at aggressive measures to try to reduce the number of students who are driving to school every day? I mean, is that not, I would assume that's got to be a plan independent of what happens with this piece of property. If the school's going to grow at all, you're going to have to solve that problem.
I think, and Jim, let me know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think as the decision on Timpview comes up, should it be a full rebuild? Parking's obviously something we have to have enough parking. That's what we're running into in Dixon and other areas. Building would be phased around the existing building, and the footprint wouldn't be a whole lot bigger than what we're looking at because we go to 3 stories. So if the neighborhood's worried about overflow onto the street, I don't know that that's as big of a concern as maybe they think it is. Because the school would actually, if we were to do a full rebuild, the school's actually going to go up.
But if the number of students isn't going to grow?
It'll grow slowly. Our projections aren't that big. Off the top of my head, I don't know what they are, but it's a couple hundred students.
And is
still
parking
10 years.
already a pretty serious problem?
The main problem with it is the slope and ice.
Yeah.
But it's not that you don't have enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to check with
Only
the
when there's
school on
activity.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a dance competition or there's a football game or something like that, then it spills out into the neighborhoods already.
My concern is there's a lot for the developer also. I don't think it's fair for us as a community to hold something PF and just say, thank you, we're just going to wait and see. When he has paid good money for a piece of property and he's just sitting on it, waiting for us to decide. I don't think it's fair for us to do that as a community for a person, because that piece of property was not necessarily for the school.
It was zoned for the school, though.
It was zoned, but it was also for the office building. If they expanded and needed more parking, they could do that.
And now, they bought it at a price that represented its zoning. And so they're taking a little bit of a gamble to buy the property at that zoning, and they get the profit if we change it.
And I agree with that. I am just uncomfortable with sitting on a piece of property saying, we'll let you know sometime. Because he's paying taxes on it, he's paying...
So it's owned by a developer.
It's owned by the person that owns the office building.
And they want to sell that one parcel.
They would like to put
They want to put
6 homes in the townhomes
on it.
So we'd have to do eminent domain if we wanted it.
Or give them enough money
Or give them
to make it
And
worthwhile for them to
he's
sell
here,
it.
I don't even know if he's interested in talking about this. This is my idea. I was surprised to see him here, to be honest with you. I just thought, it made sense to me at the neighborhood. If we need more ground, this is a contiguous piece. And if it's not, is it fair for us as a community to say, we want our cake and eat it too, to me?
Gary, I think a lot of the issue goes back to the question you asked earlier, really, is how useful would it potentially be to the school district? And at this point, we really don't know. There are some significant issues that we would have to address to see how it could.
And my concern is that it's coming to the city council and that opportunity's disappearing.
So when are you discussing this again? When are you planning on voting on this?
I think it is past planning commission, and I think it will be going to the city council on Tuesday.
In a month.
In a month, okay, I apologize, I didn't know
So we
exactly.
have time to work with our facilities director and, get some more information back to
And
you.
you can talk with him, again, this is my idea. I haven't said a word to him about this. And so I see some piece of ground and potential uses.
I don't see this as an indefinite time period. We're going to know really soon what we need to do with the new school, but until that time, I don't think we can give a really good answer on whether we can use it or not.
Especially when you're thinking the limited usability of that piece of property.
It is.
And the price that it would likely demand.
And that's the thing, I agree, this is all so preliminary. And I don't know, maybe the developer might say, you know what, going for the school, I don't know the motives behind all of this. I don't know if he needs those townhomes to keep the office building. I don't understand all that. And that's not my job to understand that. But now that he's here, now that I thought, here's an opportunity, take it and run, I'm done. Sorry, I don't want to, I think it is your job.
So, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's certainly something for the school board to consider as we are hearing this, but I think there's several ways this could go when it comes to the council.
Absolutely.
I look at the original, I'm told the development agreement didn't encompass or encumber this property, but it encumbered the other property, that it would kind of always be a certain thing, or maybe revert to R110. And so if the council decided that this property also should stay R110 and not entertain the higher density,
Well, it's not R110, it never,
Right, but stay in keeping with the R110 in the neighborhood, that's what I'm saying. And so the future zoning of the property is up in the air. The developer wants one thing, the neighborhood wants another. We decide what to do, if anything.
and those are the things, I just see this coming forward, and I would like to, if it changes, and the school board later decides they want it, it's going to be more expensive if it changes. And maybe we just, I don't know. Those are things that...
Again, I would agree with what Nate's saying, that we need to figure out what we're doing as far as the potential bond and know what's going forward before we can really make that decision of what we're going to do with that piece of property.
Or if we would have any interest in it.
So, it may not even be a possibility for land banking. I don't know. Just, I'm done with it. I just bring it up as an opportunity for conversation.
And we certainly appreciate you bringing that up, and from the school board's perspective, we certainly will evaluate things and take a look. As I did mention, we're really not at a point right now where we can make any decision. We need additional information.
So my thought on this is the fact that it's zone PF, to me, kind of sends a signal that we're thinking about the school district, or at least somebody had that in mind when it was zoned that way originally. And with all the angst that we've seen about not having enough space for quite a few of our school buildings, it just seems to me that looking ahead, if we see a significant potential that land could be useful, maybe even in the very near future, because of the rebuild, it seems like we ought to take that into account. And even actually looking a little farther ahead, the property next door there, I've always thought that was an odd place to have a professional office zone. And,
it is.
You know, the racquetball court. Yeah, a lot of problems with that. I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have seen that zone PF originally too. Now, we can't go back in time and undo that, but maybe we consider zoning that PF as well. It wouldn't change the existing use, but so that down the road, when the existing use was finished, that might potentially be available as well. Or at least until we know what's happening with the school. Obviously, if the school ends up moving, which doesn't sound real likely, that would be a different scenario.
Is it on a slope? Does anybody know? It's a
That's
slope.
part of
It's not a big slope right on that particular piece.
Yeah, I think part of Mark's concern is the access to it and that weird little.
It's just a
There's
weird
no,
shape.
it is a weird shape, I get it.
Around it, and
I
then
get it.
the amount of slope that there is, I think was his other concern.
And I would guess that the price is probably already pretty elevated.
You know what, and that could very well be. I'm sure that the school board has looked at it. It's been for sale several times, and
We actually looked at the building too, but it
And so-
was more money than we wanted to pay to graze the building.
and I get that, and the need was not there at the time. I'm just thinking, with what the neighborhood told me about growth, the potential opportunities for more growth, and need for a little more land at Tip View.
Thank you for bringing that up.
We will move on to item number 3, an update from the Provo School District regarding potential funding. If I understand correctly, I believe Mr. Strachan suggested this item, and the thought is just a general update for the City Council, just so we know where you're at.
You bet. I'm happy to take the opportunity to share with you where we're at. As you are probably aware, on Tuesday evening this week, March 26th, we held the 5th of our open meetings as we have gone out and reached out to the community in information meetings. We held that meeting at Rock Canyon. It was, by and large, the best attended meeting we had. And I think I can speak confidently for the board that we appreciated all those who spoke to us and addressed us and shared with us their feelings, their thoughts, and their concerns about what we need to consider as we move forward with the potential bond. A couple of things I think are really important for everybody to know is, first, that no decisions have been made yet. The board is still in the process of collecting and evaluating all the information. There were a number of great questions that were asked in the meeting on Tuesday evening, and there was also some great information that was provided. The board will now take all that information and begin to go through it and sift through everything and see what types of ideas begin to coalesce as we start to take a look and see what direction as a board we feel is the best way to go. When we presented the bonding numbers, and the numbers that we presented are estimates, and of course I know that you're all aware of this, having just recently gone through a bond of your own, and all of the fun that is associated with that.
Yours is going to be 4 times more fun, I said. It sounds like 4 times more.
One of the challenges, of course, is I think that as a community we have a little bit of bond fatigue right now. And so we're trying to see how we can move through this and come up with a really good, effective plan to get the types of schools that we want to have and need to have. And so when we presented the numbers on Tuesday evening, we purposely went with the high numbers and the low numbers, realizing that the reality is it will probably be somewhere in between. But we want to give the community a good feel for what we're looking at, what the potential is. On the high end, we're looking at the potential of a $255 million bond. That would be $145 million if we do a full rebuild of Timpview High School, $65 million if we rebuild Dixon Middle School on site, $30 million for the Wasatch rebuild, $10 million for an addition to Westridge Elementary, and then $5 million for security upgrades in the schools. As you may or may not be aware, in the state legislature this year, we were hoping to give a significant amount of money for security issues in the public schools, and they gave us $2 million to be distributed statewide. And so that really doesn't go very far and do very much. And so we are considering putting this on as part of the bond because we feel that security is a priceless need for our schools and to keep the children in those schools safe. And would invite you to visit any of our new schools that have been rebuilt, like Rock Canyon, or Provost, and check Edgemont, and take a look at how individuals who come to visit the school now, the access, and how much more secure and more controlled that access is, and what a benefit that is. And we've got the capacity to lock down and isolate various areas so that we can limit an intruder to a much smaller area. That was our high, that's our high number. Our low estimate is approximately $165 million. That would be $65 million for a limited rebuild of Timpview. It would really be a phased rebuild, or we'd be taking a look, and Stephanie, help me if I miss anything here, or anyone else from the board. We're looking at redoing the classroom building, the south gym, and the offices. We need to go in there and we need to remediate because it's built on a clay-based soil, and with all the wet years, and we've actually, I think we got some information recently that said that there is a water source that we don't understand exactly where the moisture is coming from that is causing some additional slippage and movement of that. And so we would want to do helical piers, and we feel that that would probably stabilize it, but you've got to go down pretty deep in order to hit bedrock. And if somebody can help me, I was a little bit surprised when they talked about the saturation that right now is at about 12 feet down. Is that it?
Top 6 to 9 feet, right? Yeah. Top
6
to 9 feet.
6 to 9 feet. That top 6 to 9 feet is already saturated at about 80%.
70 to 90. Yep.
70 to 90%. And so we're really concerned that we're going to see some significant movement this spring potentially. And the runoff hasn't hit yet. And so we are anxious as a board to see what we can do to provide those students with a much safer learning environment so we can try and mitigate this issue. The low estimate, we're looking at $55 million for Dixon. That would be an off-site rebuild. And we know that that is probably going to be the most challenging decision that needs to be made. In some ways, the Timpview decision will be a lot easier for us, but the decision about Dixon is going to be much more challenging.
Because of the price difference? Because the price difference sounds massive between the first two.
It's a $10 million difference. We get a school that is probably a little bit bigger when we go off-site than if we do the rebuild on the current site. There are some issues, though, that we're trying to be very sensitive to the neighborhood. and to the historic nature of that building and feelings of the neighbors, and those certainly need to be considered. Again, that takes into account 30 million Wasatch, 10 million Westridge, and 5 million in upgrades for security. Now, having said that, when we look at bonding, one of the big concerns we have is what is the impact going to be on the taxpayer of Provo? And not just the taxpayer in the Tintview area or in the Dixon area or the Wasatch, but we're trying to consider citywide, because the reality is that when we pay taxes, everybody's taxes go into rebuilding every project. And it's not like the taxes come just from that one school's boundaries or that other school's boundaries. It's spread out amongst all the taxpayers, and so we're trying to be really sensitive to the impact that would be felt by all taxpayers. We would do a release of three bond releases.
Probably.
Most likely, so that we could minimize that impact. And it would, of course, it would be, and Steph helped keep me on track here so I don't get off base. But obviously there would be a significant impact probably for that first 5 years as they go up, but then there would be an immediate reduction after that 5 years. For the next 5 years and ongoing, we would see a continued reduction in the amount of taxes paid.
It would depend on how we structure it. I mean, you guys have done bonds, you understand that they can be structured differently. The real simple, quick, get dirty would be first few years. We've got increases while we do the sales, and then it'll start going down as the debt gets paid off. We could look at interest upfront loans to reduce the initial tax impact, but that's going to cost more in the long run. So it's, you know, largely dependent on what the structure is, what the interest rates are at the time, all those unknowns.
And maybe just to maybe just a little bit more that I would like to share with you, particularly related to the decision regarding Dixon Middle School. There are some things that I think as a board that we are really sensitive and concerned about. First, our goal will be, when we make that final decision, what is best for all the current and future students who will be at Dixon Middle School. We're looking not just for the next 5 to 10 years, but we are looking for the next 50 years on what will benefit everyone. We're looking at what will be best for all the neighborhoods within the boundaries of the Dixon Middle School. Because the fact is that there are multiple neighborhoods that are going to be impacted, whether it has to do with walkability or biking or busing. Those impacts will hit absolutely every one of those neighborhoods in the Dixon Middle School boundaries, and we are very carefully going to assess that. As I've already mentioned, we're also going to look at what is best for all the taxpayers in Provo, and how we can get the most for the money as we're trying to be good stewards of resources and facilities. And then we're going to base our decisions on the most reliable data and facts available, including professional best practices and standards. Our plan is to make a decision and announce that decision during our business meeting on April 23rd. And so that means we have just a little under a month to do some really heavy lifting and to have some very open and honest conversations. And I can assure you that everyone on the board is committed and dedicated to making the best possible decision that we can. Now, as you well know, when the decision is made, there will be some who will be happy, and there will be some who will be unhappy, and that just comes with the territory. And that is just the reality. And I don't know who that will be. But the board is well aware that when that decision is made, that is exactly what will happen. But I think I am confident in committing and saying that we will do absolutely the best that we can as we make that decision. And I would again just say that we have not made any decisions yet. Maybe one more thing I'd like to add on a personal note is that I appreciated those who came and have come and interacted with us and have shared their thoughts, have taken the time to do research, and have suggested things that we need to take a look at. We've received information about taking a look at LEED certification and building a LEED qualified school. We've taken a look at the possibility and considering, do we build up on site? We've considered what are the pros and cons of moving to places like Footprinters or Grandview. We are trying to really look at absolutely every possibility that we can to consider everything we can. But again, that's just as kind of some background of things that we're looking at and considering, but again, no decisions have been made. Dave.
So you mentioned the
LEED certified, energy efficient type buildings. And I don't know if you're aware that the city looked at that for one of the buildings and said, you know, we're just going to build it to the standard that we want to, but we're not going to spend the money to get it certified.
And, you know, and we are aware of the additional costs that come with that and the additional requirements. But in order to feel like we are doing our due diligence and really taking a look at all possibilities, the board is perfectly willing to take a look at all those options and see. And I
But
think
you're saying you can basically be the same level as LEED certified without paying the cost of being certified.
In fact, you can be better because you can take the money you would have spent to be certified and make it better.
And do something else with it.
Yeah.
And so, but I just want to give you an idea of where we're at and where we're feeling, and we appreciate all that has gone into that. And thank you. Board, anything else you would like?
I have a question, Jim.
Yeah.
So when we were running our bond, and we've actually got some of these phone calls to our office right now, we did the average home in Provo, and it was around, they said between $240,000 and $250,000. So take the average home, $250,000, take your high bond number, 200 and what was it? 55. Can you give me the number of the monthly cost to an home of $250,000 for the high and then one for the low? What's the high number?
By the one person who knows more about that than you.
So we ran our numbers based on $100,000 in tax value, so people can kind of do some math simply. So the very first year, and again, we're assuming.
So you're going off only 100,000.
Just as an estimate.
100,000 at the value of the home.
So the very first year, just quick and dirty, making some assumptions on how much we would do for each issue, interest rates, all that. It's about a $50 increase on $100,000.
Per month?
You're talking,
For a year.
for a year. So you're talking 125 on a $250,000 home, divided by 12.
Okay.
Or what is, $12 a month?
It's not bad.
Less than $12 a month.
10, about 10.
10 something a month.
That was based on
That's for the
255?
first year. That is on the $255 million bond.
So if you take all your years and have you done an overall average? Like
Yeah,
taking them all?
I don't have that
Do
right
you
in
have that
front of
number?
me, but I can get it for you.
I would love that,
Okay.
because just talk to every individual citizen and say, we're going to break it down to one, the first year's this, the second year, and then when the bonds come in, I mean, with us at least, we projected that, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go that way.
Typically, your bonds cost more on the front end because your principal is higher unless you do an interest only. So you're going to have a few years of increases when you do those sales. And then by rights, your fair market values are going up, so your tax rates adjust down. Your debt's falling off, your principal payments are falling off. So typically, after those few years of increases,
So it just
you'll
peaks.
see decreases. It
Yeah,
peaks and then
peaks
it
and
just
then
decreases
down.
unless you do something different.
One
But I can get you those numbers.
thing that the mayor mentions is, I think is a really good point, is that if we start off low and then all of a sudden we're at the high point, trust in the community disappears. And so I would rather start at the high point and say, this is where we think it's going to be over the whole average,
Yeah.
rather than just start out down at 125 and then have it jump to 250.
Then when they call, we can at least.
And
is this
I
on the
think what we,
This particular one is.
I don't know whether we succeeded with everybody, but I think in our city bond, I think helping people understand what it's going to cost to do nothing is important. And understand, you know, as you put it, that you're building for our grandchildren, right, and our
Building for the
great-grandchildren,
future.
right? This is pretty far reaching into the future, and the impacts are incremental over time.
And I appreciate you
The
bringing
impact
that
of
up.
doing nothing is also incremental over time. The dangers
As
rise,
we
the
look
costs
at,
rise.
As we've looked at the phased rebuild for Timpview High School and look at estimates, you know, we can do 145 now, but as we project out with those additional phases, then the cost of that building goes up to about 193 million. And so that what is exactly what you're talking about, is that there's a price to be paid either way. And it's a matter of, you know, for us to feel for what the community would like to have happen and what they feel we can afford.
And once we've made our decision, then we will work really hard and quickly to get,
To
like
get
what
numbers
Mayor
for
Kafusi was
that
asking
particular-
for.
Yep.
And we will have a very aggressive, like we did with our last bond, get out to the public and share all those kinds of things with them.
Can you
Until
help me with
November.
the question that I'm getting, and it has to do with it can't do so bad, why stay there? And it's, I can say, I talked to him about the cost of other moving it, but why are we putting this much money again
There's,
into this?
do you know where there's 40 acres on the east side?
But the question that I get, when I say that, give them that answer, they say, but aren't we throwing it down
No.
a single?
No, because
But helical piers
there's-
underneath it that we don't have.
There's engineering advances that have happened
And
that
that's-
Mark says we can remediate now, just like we did on the west side.
We were
That-
also gonna,
That didn't happen when they built.
we're gonna also take out all the clay.
Dig out the clay soil.
And bring
That's
it
all
in,
part of
so
it.
And I appreciate that, and I kind of understand that, but some people that I
Construction's a
talk
lot
with
different now.
doesn't quite understand that, and so I appreciate the answer.
So it is the site that's causing it, like you're saying. The site is causing it, but there are, like,
We can
like,
remediate.
we can remediate it now, like we couldn't in the 70s when we
Really?
built. So if you ask Mark Willard, these are solutions that are 100%. So the soil's not going to be an issue any longer, even though it's causing the issue right now. It will no longer be an issue once it's fixed.
Because of piers.
So then the site itself will be fabulous.
And that's why part of the expense.
Yeah, and that's another question I thought, that was the question you were gonna bring up, is why is it so much more expensive? That's part of the reason, and because the soil remediation is
Well, and inflation.
extremely expensive.
Inflation,
and
as you
inflation.
know, is really killing us right now.
Not inflation. Inflation.
Construction, inflation, and
Prisons and airports being built that are taking up all our space.
So if you're looking for acreage, you know, there might be something along those lines in Mountain Vista Park, on the kind of the far extreme south of the city. But you have to ask, you know, what is the value of having a school located kind of in more of the central part of the population rather than moving into the far extreme of development, the far edge of the development.
Is there property available down there? In the mountain?
Mountain Vista Park?
Either way south.
It's
Or
almost a
industrial
spring
area.
I believe there is, yeah.
Now that where we built our transportation, that area, there probably is, but.
But you'd have a lot of remediation to do at that site also.
Mountain Vista is even further south than our transportation.
It's almost
past all the houses.
Yeah, that's pretty
Or
gross.
most.
You got transportation increases there, because you're probably busing with both of the students.
Yeah. There's only across the street from there is it's like California Ave and I'm trying, you know,
The states, the state streets
are right there.
That's
the only housing that's right there, and you'd have to cross State
Cross
Street.
State Street, yeah.
The reason I ask is because Mark has really searched high and low for a good piece of property, and I would guess he's aware of it, and I would guess the reason he hasn't suggested it is because it's not, yeah, for whatever reasons, cost or location or whatnot, it's not really feasible, so that would be my guess.
I know we've talked about location a lot.
What's been your reaction in the Timpview neighborhood? I mean, because I know about the Blues Park situation, but every person I talked to in that neighborhood, I said, you don't want the school to leave, do you? And they said, oh, no, we don't want it to leave.
I'll let Jim answer that.
You know, we get mixed reviews. There are some who say do a full rebuild. There are some who say do a phased rebuild. There are some who are like, you know, Gary Winterton, like they're asking you, Gary, is, well, what, why, how come? And so it's.
But then I asked him the question, do you want it to move? No, I'm with yours.
There's not any one position or another related to what we're doing.
I do feel like I would like to comment on that, though, as we've gone along in the process, that I feel like, and this is a personal opinion, maybe anyone can chime in on this, but the resistance we got at the beginning towards Timpview has really decreased a lot as we've been able to get more facts and figures out to people. We just did a survey, we had a surveying crew come in and show that there literally are spots that are 5 inches lower than where they were originally built. Just things like this, I feel like the facts are helping people feel less resistant to it. So I feel like
if we're looking for an overall support of the bond, maybe Julie and Nate
I think one of the issues too that has come up more recently is this idea of a partial rebuild. And people like that we have options, we're talking options, and moving the school removes all those options. It changes the conversation completely. And so I think that's why some people, at least to me, have expressed they aren't necessarily, they don't want to have those options taken off the table when we talk moving the school. We don't have property, so we haven't talked about that in depth. We don't have property. But they're resistant to that idea because that takes that partial rebuild off the table immediately, and
it's
costs.
It's really easier and a lot less complicated.
Exactly, and it would cost a whole lot more because we'd also have to procure that land, even if it is available. And money, it all comes back to the money.
At least from my perspective, there have been so many news articles. I think I heard some teacher was issuing whistles if the school falls down. Did you hear that? And it's for the kids to be able to find themselves. And so instead of people saying, don't do Timpview, they're all like, how soon are you going to do Timpview? Why aren't you doing it right now?
So it sounds like there's a much more positive, and I'm hopeful that also what the community has seen is that we really are looking at options everywhere. And it's not like we're going in, it's got to be this way. And as these options become available, we're certainly willing to engage as we need to.
Just one other thing, I think to Nate's point is this idea of, we have tried really hard, and you guys know because you went through this too, to walk this balance of raising awareness without being alarmist. And it's difficult. We need to let people know, we are not intentionally trying to scare people and to make them afraid to send their kids. We wouldn't be sending kids into that school if we thought it was going to cave in on them.
We have 3 of us that have kids.
Right. Right. I mean, but, and so I know that I had somebody accuse me of deliberately trying to use scare tactics to get people to favor, and support this bond. That absolutely isn't the case. At the same time, we have to raise issues. We have to raise issues. We have to share the information, and that's a really hard line to walk.
Just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that you move Timpview.
Right.
I don't have a vote on that, but I would support, or I would advocate for that. My guess is, though, it would be cheaper because the land there is cheap and because you skip out on a lot of the extra costs of building, around an existing structure.
And exactly, the phasing, and it does take off, though, it completely takes off the table those lower options.
Yes, right. And I also think that it may not come down to the dollars and cents, but there's value in having where solar is located.
Absolutely. And we are talking about all of that for sure.
One of the things Mayor Catrusi did, and it was really impressive, I think, to the community, is as we talked about our new sewer treatment facility, we were talking $200 million. And they went to work and worked really hard to get some money from the state at 0.5% interest. But as they did that, they were also continually to review the process. Our sewer treatment plant costs have gone way down. We've gotten $79 million now from the loan for our sewer treatment plant. It's nowhere near $2 million. It's not the same thing, but we are really working hard to keep those costs down, rather than 200 million to 79, and I think that has made a big impression on the citizens of Provo, recognizing, you know what, they are working hard. And as you guys go through this process, somehow you can show them where you are working to save that money. It makes a big difference.
Thank you. Appreciate your input and interaction with us on this.
So item 4, last item of the afternoon, is a discussion of possible mitigations for walking students and increased traffic on the west end of Center Street near Amelia Earhart Elementary School. I believe this was requested by the school district, so we'll look to you for the introduction.
I've been getting more, as we know, as the west side's building up, there's more and more traffic out there. We always have these conversations about traffic by the schools. So I've had some specific questions about what's intended, and if anybody knows, and kind of maybe a longer term and possibly even a shorter term plan on what's happening on the west end of Center Street, particularly the intersections near Amelia Earhart. It's going to pull it up. Where's 2530? 2530 West Center Street? Is that Center Street at the top there? Okay, so can we move it down a little bit so we can see? And then where's the school from right there? Right, yeah.
That's the church. That's the church. It's the white building right there.
Okay, so it actually we want to come back out so we can see a bigger key. Okay, so what's happening at 2530, which is right up 2530 Center Street. That is right there. That little. Thank you. Right here. So we've got kids walking from all these neighborhoods, and they kind of congregate here, and they walk up here. This right here, I'm having more than one. I've had some patrons ask about traffic remediation. Do we have any plans for any stoplights out there? I know it's quite a ways out. Stoplight is what they've asked about particularly, or even just flashing lights, or if anything's going in, and then just kind of a general idea of what's happening on that west end of Provo. Because right now, I think it's just, we have a light at Geneva Road and then there's nothing else the rest of the way.
So there's not a crossing guard there?
I don't think there is. But there might be. I'm just going on based on, I'm not out there in the morning to see. I know there's not a flashing light.
So maybe I can't, so maybe I'm Shane Winters, I'm with the engineering department in Public Works. Maybe I can give you an overall aspect of everything that's going on out here, because it is, as far as busy, you see a lot of construction going on. Okay, I'll go ahead and start. You can kind of see the this portion of new roadway here, okay? That is the extension of Lakeview Parkway. You probably already aware that the construction down from the airport to I-15, this is a continuation of that road all the way north, eventually all the way to Orem 2000 north, okay? We're finishing this phase. This is an additional phase of Lakeview Parkway from Mike Gent's up to Center Street. We should have this completed by the end of this year, this phase. One of the things is we talked about is the sewer treatment facility and all the options and things going on out there. One of the major things that's going on along with this roadway is we're installing a large sewer main all along the west side. And it is going within Lakeview Parkway. You're probably seeing down here to 550. It comes across right here, roughly the 550 south area to, what is that, 6 south? And then they'll continue that down to a new lift station that's just south of Lakeview Parkway. So that's a lot of the construction you're seeing right now that's kind of going through that area. I know there was some impact, and we've worked with contractor to make sure that we're not getting any truck traffic, that stuff through the school. We've told them to keep over here on Geneva. So that's what's going on. Additionally, we're going to be continuing an additional phase, if you want to pull that down just a little bit more. Oh, the other way, sorry. Oh, sorry. So you're probably aware, if you go down a little more, for the high school, one of the critical pieces traffic-wise was to extend 620 and get this portion of Lakeview Parkway around the school to help alleviate some of the safety and traffic concerns that were going to happen around the high school. So we went ahead and got that piece, and that's disappeared now. Sorry. That's okay. Oh my goodness.
I'm really sorry now.
So we got that piece. So anyway, from Center Street up to 620 where we ended right there, we're actually going to be starting construction of that here in the early summer. That's going to require 2 bridge structures. What is happening is, if you're aware, is called the Delta Restoration Project. They're going to be realigning portion of the Provo River for the June sucker. With that, it's going to require a bridge structure, a new bridge structure over the existing portion. Oh, just a little. Oh, sorry. A new bridge structure here, and then this portion of the river will be realigned and fan out to a new delta. So we'll be building a new structure here and a new structure here. So there's going to be some additional truck traffic probably along Center Street as we fill this roadway. It's going to be extensive. It's about 18 months to 2 years of settlement that we got to do for these bridges. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of why you see all the construction going on out there. As far as this specific intersection, if you zoom in, there is a school crossing located at that intersection. Right here, and you can see the high hazard crosswalk. There is actually flashing lights.
Okay, so they have.
There is, and there is actually a crossing guard there.
Right, and I assume there probably was, and that's why they're asking about, they vamped it up and they're asking about stoplights.
Yes, and
so is that?
And stoplights particularly, we have no problem going out and do it. We do it by warrant. Again, it's based on traffic. You know, ADT, it's based on another factor of safety. So absolutely, we can go out there and do a warrant study.
So how do we request that? I think that's
just
can I
okay.
interject?
So that's really
absolutely.
So can I just interject with a lot of what she's just asking? How do I go about doing that? Going back to safe routes, like how?
Okay, so maybe I'll give it.
Yeah.
Right.
Time-wise, just a really quick brief. Okay, Safe Routes to School is administered by the state. Specifically, it's oversaw by UDOT. So there's state code, and along with state code, there is what we call the MU, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Device. It's a federal policy and document that guides, installation of all traffic and safety devices. Each state has the ability within that to either adopt what's in that or form their own portion of what we call the Safe Routes program. Utah has adopted their own portion, which is Chapter 7. Of that document, and so that guides the process for safe routes. That process, if you probably may or may not be aware, just quickly, is the school community council, along with the principal, should be meeting annually to formulate the Safe Routes to School. They formulated a plan called, it used to be called a SNAP plan, a Student Neighborhood Access Plan. That's been changed now. The state now is calling that just specifically the state route plan. And that plan is developed by the community council and the principal for each school, elementary, junior high, middle school, for those. And then they need to submit that to the state every year, that plan. As part of that plan, the district, again, meets to discuss those Safe Routes to School plan. And as far as the city, that's where we kind of come in to want to be a part of that process of that traffic, what is it, the traffic council, traffic safety, district's traffic safety council, where they discuss as a whole all the school routes within the school districts, and then they meet with the city for all the things that we need to look at as far as those safe routes. Implementation, just whatever issues with current safe routes, those things. So that's part of the process. So as we get comments from the public, we guide them back to the community council, because that is the basis point of where everything begins. So that's kind of where it would go back to. I would say, yeah, talk with the school community council, the principal, so that we can get that. I think it's Troy and of course Mark, that we can get that at the district, and then we can sit down with them and say, okay, this is what we need to implement.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of other issues with the city, not only us, but the police department is involved in those discussions. So a lot of different entities involved, but that's the process. We want to make sure we stick to that, right, so that we can go that. So absolutely, for us as a signal though, that wouldn't necessarily be a safe route.
Yeah, and we're just, I know we worked on, and I know you have to go through the study and you have to count traffic and cars and all that, and that's what they wanted. And I have spoken with the principal, and after some of these concerns were showing up, and I just wanted to see if there was already any plans, what the long-term plan was, and if not, if we can request that study.
Absolutely, and that doesn't have to be part of the safe route. That could be, because that is a traffic and safety, regardless of the school safe route. We can look at that and see if it does warrant a traffic signal there. Okay. And if it does, then we can look at the budgeting process if that warrants different installations.
And what kind of a timeline do we look at on something like to even just find out?
To do actual warrant study is a few weeks.
Okay.
So we'll know if that actually does warrant from the traffic and safety standpoint. And then we can actually respond back to you in a letter and a memo explaining if that does or if it doesn't.
And I don't know that it's going to rise to that level. I guess the good news is I haven't heard much about construction traffic. I'm not hearing those complaints.
We've been very proactive to keep them down on Lakeview, away from, and I'll try to keep them as much as we can on Center Street.
I think one of the things is people circling around to that parkway, and they see the high school traffic is just, that's where the concern is.
It does, and I think Center Street has started, because with the high school, we know that there is, we've seen some traffic increase on Center Street.
And there's increased traffic even at the airport.
Absolutely.
Just so you know, at the airport,
exactly.
At the airport, they've had to go at midnight because there is a route you have to get the concrete in 22 minutes or 29 minutes.
Very, very quickly.
And if you don't, you have to get rid of that concrete. And they have been doing a big concrete project at the airport for Duncan Aviation. And so they've done this at midnight so that to help alleviate some of the challenges so that they could get that concrete in place before that 22-minute expires, or what is it, 22, 29?
It's about 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Just because, at an airport, we have some very high specifications on concrete, so.
They time it from when they leave the manufacturing, the cement plant, to where it gets to the site, and if it's longer than that, they can't use it.
It's much more, it's a higher process than just a roadway concrete. It's a lot heavier airplane,
So every year, the schools I work with, they always say, okay, we feel like we need some changes with the four-way stop or crosswalk. How in the world do we do that? So you're saying the principal should always forward that to Mark Wheeler, and then he knows who to contact at the city?
Troy, who is the district safety coordinator, the school district sport. Yeah, that should go through him, and then he will coordinate all the district's traffic and safety concerns, school routes to the city, and we'll work directly with Troy to try to get those addressed and see what we can do.
Going along with that, so there's just been a lot of confusion with, starting back, go to your community council. I'm on a community council. We all don't know what we're doing because there's nothing in play telling us what we're supposed to do to get something done. So what we're just trying to do is, can we get something in writing to say, like, in September, you need to meet with your community council, have the police officers at your community council, have the neighborhood chairs at your community council. Like, we're having real issues, like, we've been working on something at Centennial and Rock Canyon for about 3 or 4 years now, and nothing's getting done. So we just need to know, like, can we have a set process in place to make it happen?
Something to help us refine our process.
And I, as a city, like I said, we're willing to help in that, whatever that is. Would we be willing to help? But I would say that may come back to Troy. For us, it becomes difficult. I think one of the difficulties is, in the school year, you come back in what is that, August timeframe, and you're worried about all of this stuff, and then it seems to get forgotten in January. My recommendation, we start in January.
It's due at the end of April, isn't it?
Yeah, because
due in March, I thought.
That's when it's due. And that's kind of the time frame, as soon as we can know what the issues are, that helps allow the city to budget. We have to budget these things. One of the difficulties for the police department is the school crossing guards. It's very difficult for the police department, so the earlier we are in that process of knowing what that is, it really helps them. So my suggestion would be start in January, but I would look back to Troy and say, whatever that process is, we're willing to help you.
So I was on Timpanogos Elementary School's Community Council 10 or so years ago, and in some ways it sounds like not much has changed. There was confusion back then, and there's confusion now, and I love that we're having this conversation in this room, because I think part of it is because there's so many different, it's coordination between different groups.
Yeah.
And so the school district said, or the schools say, well, we got to pass it to the district, and then there's often a gap there. And then the district needs to coordinate with the city, and sometimes there's a gap there. And it seems like it goes all, it's convoluted way up.
And then it gets lost.
And it gets lost in the crack anyway, or sometimes it actually gets talked about, but that never filters down. We submit it in April or whatever. The decisions are being made over the summer. The community councils aren't meeting during that time. You come back in the fall, you might have different community council members, and it's like, so principal, what happened? Well, I don't know. I never heard anything.
Well, and you can have new principals too. They're
right.
And they don't understand.
And so to have, I hear, you know, community council members saying, how do we do this? And like my first thought is, you should talk to the school board about that, or talk to the school district about that. So I love having this communication, this conversation in this group, because we've got the district, we've got the board, we've got the council. Not that I feel like we have that much to do with it, but we have the city administration, the engineer here. We don't have police here, but there has to be a better way to do this, and I think just a little bit more coordination and communication, both up and down, will go along with it.
And absolutely, and that's why I kind of made the suggestion, just even if engineering and the police department are in the background on these meetings, it can help maybe close that loop a little bit on things. Like I said, we're willing to always be a part of those councils, whatever fashion you'd like us to be there, so that we, like I said, because a lot of times we receive things way late, and all of a sudden, you know, it's a real safety issue, and now becomes a real alarm, and we're like, well, this is out of nowhere. And so if we can get ahead of that a lot earlier in the game, we'll definitely help accommodate that.
One final comment for me, but it might be helpful is, and maybe at the community council level, the neighborhood level, is there some kind of a document or something that can even say, because sometimes we've got some parents that think this is a safety issue because 4 cars drove by and my kid has, they don't know what the threshold is.
Yes.
To meet, because there's very specific needs before a light can go in and before a crossing guard.
So there is the Chapter 7.
So where can we?
That is so UDOT. If you go to Safe Routes,
UDOT.
I think saferoutes.utah.gov. They're actually formulating a new website. They are revising that. I hope some of that information will be on there as far as
where it will say
better process. But no, the MUTC, that Chapter 7, there's a document. So the Utah MUTCD Chapter 7.
Utah spelled out.
Utah.
MUTCD.
Yeah, so you're not there.
Just the
okay. So here, this is their updating. This is what it was forming, the SNAP, the Student Neighborhood Access Program. On here, they have a link to all the plans, the neighborhood or the school plans. You can now actually pull off the website. So there's a link.
But is it going to tell them here what?
The actual process is for the district.
Well, but also but the rules as far as getting that flashing light or getting the crossing guard or getting a.
So the Chapter 7, and that's where we would come in and help. Like if there's something.
That's where you do the studies.
Council, the community council, if there's, because this document is, just make sure you're wide awake and you're fully fed before you start reading that document. But yes, it is very specific as to how these devices should be implemented and what warrants, you know, because there's different tiers.
And those are some of the challenges I have encountered, is just people not understanding what, that we can't just, not even just the process necessarily, but the rules. And it's not just because a few people think this needs to happen, that there's rules that have to be followed.
There's very specific state code on that, and the MUTC is very specific how those are warranted and to be implemented. Like I said, we're tied to that.
So this is about us doing a better job of setting expectations.
And the MUTC is located on that website.
It's here, and it's also, if you go to Provo City, our website, Safe Routes to School, there's a link down there to that MUTC document. You can go there, and like I said, it lays this process out very specifically, and it has how things are warranted.
Thank you,
it is all there.
Great. Thank you. Glad we started this conversation. Please, let's not end this conversation here. It needs to continue. Board President Pedersen, anything before we close?
I think we're good.
Okay. Unless there's any objections, I'll declare the meeting adjourned by unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Thank you.